But first, a few disclaimers. This could end up being a chaotic mess. I don't have a script, which I usually do, and I'm recording a lot of this out of order, which I don't like doing. However, that was necessary for me to be able to share all of my thoughts. Also, the sound quality and volume may vary throughout this. I recorded parts out of order on multiple different days to make sure I said everything I wanted to say and also to fix some glaring audio issues. Additionally, a lot of this will be speculation on the plot and what the plot could be based on the notes and the lore that exists in the game. There will be some changes in the show, so take all of this with a grain of salt, and a lot of this is speculation, unless it is something that Wildcard or any of the people working on the show have said. Trailers can be purposely misleading. The point is for them to make you interested in watching a thing, so events are going to be shown in a way that makes them seem entertaining and exciting. This also means that there will be spoilers for Ark's story and Ark's notes, even events that are not from the island. So if you haven't read the notes yet and want to do that first, or want to watch the show without knowing anything about the story, then there will be spoilers. This is just going to be my initial thoughts. I've given all my thoughts enough time to bounce around in my head like a Windows screensaver. I am just going to go on a partially unscripted rant. Yippee! So maybe this will be less of an analysis and more of a, wow, I love this. But I do, it looks so cool. 2D animation is the best thing ever. I am very biased towards it. I love May. Have I mentioned that she is my favorite character? I assume that will become very obvious very soon. However, I am worried that I'm not going to like some of the changes, since they seem like large changes to the story that I know and love so much. Because the show looks so awesome, and I really hope that I end up liking it. I was the person who, as a kid, I watched the Dinotopia movie adaptation, and while watching, I had the book in front of me, and I was reading through it. Spoilers, the movie was nothing like the book, but it still looked cool. I'm surprised the scene with Uzwe wasn't there, or him at all, honestly. He and Rockwell seemed too important to leave out of the trailer, but maybe they're saving them for later. But this is also only Season 1, so a lot of things that I expected to see might be missing in Season 2, like the entire Arctic battle scene. The animated series and the trailer showing all the characters and scenes from the show is something that I have been thinking about almost every day since they first announced it, and I'm still in a state of disbelief that it actually happened, and that the show itself is supposedly coming soon. And about that, the official release seems to be early 2023, and we still don't know what platform it's going to be on. Supposedly, Season 2 is also going to be 2023, but we'll see how long that lasts. That's the main thing that worries me. It seems like Season 1 is mostly or completely done by this point. So why they're still not giving a release date or even a platform, which by that point, that information is usually given for most shows. This just feels like it's becoming an endless cycle at this point. Last year I remember thinking, oh, it's almost 2022, almost time for the Arc show. And now this year it's going to be, oh, it's almost 2023, almost time for the Arc show. However, I'm suspecting that this has something to do with finding a platform to put it on, and it's not Wildcard's fault at all. The two platforms that I've heard rumors of, HBO and Netflix, seem to be having a lot of problems lately. I don't know entirely what's going on, but I know that both have canceled and removed a bunch of animated projects. So maybe it's just getting hard to find a place to put it. Also, I would like to mention that this article does say it's a Netflix show. However, that has not been officially stated by Wildcard, and Wildcard has even said that the platform has not been announced yet, and it probably won't be until next year. So I'm having a lot of trouble believing this, and I am just going to assume this is a rumor. My thoughts on the trailer itself. I'm not really sure how to format this. I might just show scenes and then talk about what I think of them. I don't have a script, which I usually do. I'm just reading off of bullet points in a Google document.
I'm proud of you.
I couldn't have done it without you.
And you'll never have to.
I've found in my life that a sense of loss is inescapable. Death smiles at us all in its time.
Tell me you'll change your mind.
I can help those people. I can make a difference. You'll be okay.
Perhaps we are being punished, and the shadows of our deeds in life have followed us here.
No one knows where, or indeed what, this place is. Some think it to be the afterlife, and others purgatory.
How can I fear death, Helena? I have already died. As have we all. These are not my stars. And this is no afterlife. If it were, I would see my wife again. I would hold my son in my arms.
Helena?
There is only one way that we all come to be in this land of the would-be dead, Helena of the Walkers.
First, some of these quotes are the same quotes from the initial teaser, and I really like that the trailer began with showing Helena's life before the island. I think it's just funny reading all the comments about how this is an arc. I'm really glad that they are showing more flashbacks of the characters' lives than the notes had, because the notes had some, but not as many as this show seems to have. And this scene here is most likely from the same time as this image. I forgot that Helena lived during almost present day, so initially I was shocked to see her with a phone, and I love seeing all the images of Helena and Victoria. I like them already, and the show isn't even out yet. And I wonder where Victoria is going. The description lists her as a humanitarian aid worker, so it probably has to do with that. Also, Helena and Victoria have matching trilobite tattoos, and I love them so much. Also, the trilobite tattoo is in a similar place as the implants. If it symbolizes something, such as something that is important to Helena or Victoria, or an important event in their lives, it could be a plot point that she doesn't have it anymore and that it's now replaced by the implant. It could also mean that there's an actual trilobite. I like the transitions between what is most likely Helena after Victoria dies and their life together, and the quotes from the characters talking about what the arcs could be is such a nice touch. And while Rockwell isn't shown in the trailer, there is a quote from him here. Also, Helena has a dinosaur shirt and a dinosaur clock. Even considering that shows and movies don't usually make me cry, this show is going to make me cry many, many times. I figured Helena would die since that's how you end up on the arcs, but I didn't realize Victoria was going to as well. Anyways, if I hadn't heard of ARC before and saw this trailer, I'm sure I would have ended up loving it and being instantly invested, because I like shows where it seems like the characters are just living a normal life and then something really strange happens, and that's what this trailer does. It shows us these two characters living their lives, and then one of them is taken to some strange dinosaur world. And that's another thing. I forget that to her it would probably just feel like an instant. First you think you're dead, and then you instantly wake up on the island. Another thing that I really like about this show is that they actually made Victoria Helena's wife, and it's actually a major part of the plot and of her character development. I'm so glad it isn't going to be like other shows where it's just a quick mention, like Helena randomly saying once, "Oh, I have a wife," or just one random flashback that doesn't have any effect on the plot. The character relationships are my favorite part about ARC. We still don't know who this person is, so maybe they aren't as important as I initially thought they were going to be.
What will I do without you?
Also, Nerva talks to Helena at some point during the first season. While nobody knows if both the first and second season will be the island, or just the first season, this could mean that Helena and Nerva interact more here than in the notes, or just that the entire island story is the first season. The first time they interacted was at the end of the notes. Helena of the Walkers is one of the best things I have ever heard. It's also really interesting how here you wake up in the middle of the ocean, as opposed to the game where you wake up on the beach. And there's Megalodon and Lead Sixties. I was not expecting Lead Sixties, but it is one of my favorites, so I am glad to see it. Also, I really like this scene. The moment of realization when she notices that it's a dodo, and how her fear turns to curiosity.
You mind not domesticating my dinner there? The name's Bob, and this place is a lot more dangerous than you know.
The dodo is the best character, Bob is the best character, and then the dodo. The dodo is so expressive, hiding behind Helena. Though, I wouldn't trust her because she did say that dodos aren't good companions, and the almighty Bob are beloved. I wasn't sure if he was going to be in the trailer or not, but it is cool to see him have such a big role in it. And I hadn't seen any implants on any of the characters, so I was wondering if they had removed them from the story for the series, but Bob does have one. Ah yes, video game.
We should get moving. You don't know how you got here, right? You woke up in the water, washed up on the beach. It was the same for me.
I love that Bob is the one she meets first, and he's the one who teaches her about the island, also the dodo just sitting there. And the Titanomyrma, probably. I have no idea if I'm saying that right. It's such an obscure animal that I could barely find any pronunciation guides on it. They do seem smaller than they are in-game, so maybe they are some other type of ant. Also, the dodo eats them, so Bob and Helena are lucky that they don't have to deal with giant ant jump scares.
I can't believe it.
Believe it.
Wow.
And I have imagined what this scene would be like many times. Studying these creatures all your life, and then realizing that they are still alive. This show looks beautiful, and the backgrounds are stunning. We've got Brontosaurus and Triceratops, and I am glad to see that there are color variations among the dinosaurs. It just adds a nice touch to the world. This seems to be a new character riding a raptor. Maybe from the new Legion? The raptor looks very similar to the one from the original teaser, so maybe they are the same person. And speaking of the original teaser, none of those scenes appeared here, so I wonder where that fits into the story. I would have assumed it was early after Helena arrived, but Bob isn't there, which makes me afraid for him. Bob should be there when they fight the King Titan, whether it's canon or not. And then that character with a pack of raptors, who all seem to have riders, running towards a village. It looks like it's possibly on fire. One building is in the lake, so maybe this is built partially in the swamp. I'd assume that they are going to attack it or defend it. And I am wondering if this character is from the Legion, if only because they have a similar red and gold color scheme that the others do. I was going to say those were similar to the flag colors, but I don't think that the notes ever said what color it was. I just think those are fan designs that my brain has accepted as canon. Still, I'd assume it's close to canon because, as far as I remember, the design was based on a real Roman flag design. And then there's Helena and the dodo. Helena still has Bob's bag, and they are running through a village at night. She has her parasaur here. I wonder if Bob was the one who taught her to tame it? I'd assume either him or the people in the village. And I wish parasaurs could do that in-game. I'm not sure who she was fighting. They had flak armor. My go-to answer is always, maybe they're from the new Legion, since they were the main threat in the island notes. Which also makes me wonder if the person in the teaser was also part of the new Legion? Which would be strange, because that would mean Nerva and Helena arrived at the island at the same time. I always liked that Helena's story was more about exploration than fighting, and I like how each character seemed to have a different role on the island. But this is also before the notes, and she had to become familiar enough with the island to feel safe enough to spend a lot of time on scientific discoveries somehow. Also because I can relate to her a lot, because when I first started playing, I made my own journal about the creatures and probably should try to find that one day. The parasaur doesn't have the saddle yet, which could further prove my theory that she was given the saddle by the woman in the dossier. And this looks like a coelacanth. Perhaps one of my favorite creatures in ARC, and just in general, so I'm happy to see it. Also, the Troodon just stealing it is funny. Helena seems startled, but that's not the worst that they could have done.
I'm Helena.
Mei Yin.
And this is where we first see Mei Yin. I love her character so much, and she's so cool fighting creatures. However, if this is where they first meet, it is very different than the notes. It could just be that the scene doesn't match the lines, since it is a trailer. In the notes, it takes a while for Mei to even tell Helena her name, and here she's just introducing herself immediately. And they meet when Helena visits her to study the creatures. And I like that a lot about their story. When they first met, they didn't really trust each other, but their friendship grew over time. And I loved watching it grow and change, not just on the island, but throughout the entire story. Here, they seem to be friends immediately. And I wonder if the show isn't going to focus as much on Mei, Rockwell, and Nerva's own journeys on the island outside of when they're interacting with Helena, which is a bit disappointing to me, if that is the case. Because that's what I liked about the notes. You got to see everyone's individual story, so that each character became more relatable. If we don't get any of the scenes with Mei and Helena trying to cook food, I'm going to be very disappointed. Here it also looks like somebody shot the saber-tooth. Probably Helena, because she had the bow in the scene from the teaser. But it also looks like Mei has the knife that she has in this image, and a bag that looks very similar to Helena's. I'm wondering if Helena finds the saber-tooth after she's dropped her bag and tries to get it because it has her book in it, and she doesn't want to lose that. I'm trying to see if she has it in this scene here. And Mei picks up the bag after Helena has dropped it, or she just has a very similar bag. But I just noticed it because I don't think she had it in any of the other scenes. And this seems to be something that Helena is always carrying. Also, the saber-tooth looks massive, but maybe it's just the game's perspective that makes them seem smaller. And this scene, wow. Mei is just doing her best Timur impression. I am torn with this scene, because on one hand, it's so cool, and on the other, Mei never fought the Broodmother in the notes. That was the Iron Brotherhood, and I was hoping to see more of them in the show, because most of the tribes didn't have any individual characters with personalities, except the leader of the Iron Brotherhood, who seemed to have a bit of a backstory with the Broodmother, and I was hoping to see that expanded on more in the series. I am wondering if Helena was there too, especially since the next scene seems to take place in the Broodmother arena, which looks like it's in a cave with some glowing green stuff. I kind of like that they didn't show all of the boss fights in the notes, and that the characters encountered them in different ways, because it felt less repetitive. In the game seems to have a repetitive cycle of gather artifacts, gather resources, breed dinosaurs, fight a big monster, and then repeat. And when I started reading the notes, I was worried that it was going to feel too repetitive and too boring because of that. I think the notes did it really well, and that's something I'm hoping to talk about in the future. But maybe it'll be different because this is a show, and you get to see all the cool action scenes. And the Broodmother arena is really beautiful in animation. You can even see the tech element parts here. It's interesting that they have tech now, and this is probably the one that Rockwell has. This might be the change that I am the most worried about, because I like that it was gradually revealed to the characters, with tech outside of the obelisks and the artifacts making an appearance first in Aberration. But one tech rifle probably isn't going to change much. I wonder how Rockwell gets it. Maybe she gives it to him, or he takes it when he is working with Nerva. Though that would probably be much later in the story. Although this change honestly doesn't bother me as much as I thought it was going to be, mainly because I just find this really funny. It reminds me a lot of Extinction, with the prism. When May touched it, it did nothing, but as soon as Helena touched it, it exploded and gave her strange visions about ladders. I'd like to imagine that happens a lot with Helena and Tech. And by that point, May is just thinking, why do you keep doing this? And the obelisk. I've said it before, and I'll say it many more times. The backgrounds are beautiful. I think the show, or at least the trailer, seems to be focusing a lot more on characters' past lives and how they got on the Ark, and everyone's individual opinions of what the Ark is, instead of the obelisks and the artifacts and the mystery behind them, which is maybe because Rockwell doesn't appear at all in the trailer, and he was the one who was obsessed with that. But I do really like the concept of arriving at this strange world and having no idea what it could be and what it means, and each character's own backstory and past lives affecting how they view this world. And so I'm really glad to see that explored in the show. What's really interesting is the transition between the Tech rifle and the obelisk. It's clear that the trailer is trying to show the connection between the two items. At first I was confused about why the Equus looked different, and yet all the other creatures looked relatively the same. But then I realized that this is most likely a flashback. The backgrounds are stunning.
Fight to free all those whose names you do not know and may never know.
This scene really does look like what I imagined one of the conversations between these characters would look like. I think this quote summarizes her pretty well, since she is the one defending the villages and protecting those she loves. Anyways, that quote reminds me a lot of one of her other notes. I am trying to be honorable by defending people and not attacking them, but how can I be certain? And there's Dimorphodon. Somebody shot an arrow at it. Not much else to say about this scene. This character is listed as John or Thunder Comes Charging in the cast list, I think. I really hope this isn't Scorched Earth John. I think that might be too much of a change for me, because I like his story and Raya's story, and I really hope to see it in the show. And I have been thinking that if this character is the same as Scorched Earth John, there could be another reason for that. Just as Genesis had multiple clones of Santiago, this could be a different version of him, though that still would not explain his quote about his wife and child. Regardless of whether this is Scorched Earth John or not, something tells me I am going to like this character. And speaking of Santiago, while he wasn't in the trailer, he is still in the cast list, and does have an official poster, which is interesting because Santiago himself does not appear until Aberration, and in that poster he is shown with a tech suit and a bulldog, which are both from Aberration. Well, the bulldog is from Aberration, and in the notes the tech suit first appears in Aberration. Additionally, he is described as a mech pilot, which doesn't happen until Extinction. And I can't imagine them combining Aberration and Extinction into the second season, or combining the island and Scorched Earth into the first season, as well as adding many new characters and plots. So maybe Santiago is just there because they know who will be voicing him, or he will make appearances throughout the show by having him be on the island at times, or showing scenes of him on Aberration. And some Pteranodons! It's him with May and Helena riding the Pteranodon too, showing that they might become friends at some point and go on some sort of journey together. I don't think any of the others have riders. Helena and May definitely spend a lot more time together here than in the notes. And it's interesting, since Helena must not have Athena at this point, or maybe just left Athena at home, though she did when she met May in the notes. Ark's Pteranodon carrying one person in the game, as well as being able to grab and pick up a person or small creature, is already a stretch. Now, there's two people riding it, and it's carrying Helena. These must be some strong pterosaurs.
Don't go into the long grass!
This is another one of the new characters from the posters. Lassie, I think? Running from Stegosaurus. Maybe she trespassed or stole an egg. That looks so awesome, and I wish I could do that. I wish I had a dinosaur. And it's cool to see another one of her dinosaurs, and fighting the Uranus on some sort of bridge. Where they're fighting here looks a bit like the canyon area in Ragnarok, but I'm sure it can't be. I had always assumed that the Uranus was Nerva's dinosaur, since it seemed like one he would have, but I can't tell if that is Nerva. I'm actually wondering if this is the Gladiatrix, since she hasn't appeared yet in the trailer. And the Uranus saddle seems to have the same spike theme as her Compy's collars. The Rex still has 3 fingers. I'm not really sure why. This is something I would ignore and overlook if the Rex in-game also had 3 fingers, but since it doesn't, I'm just confused as to why that's the design choice they went with.
It is the way of the warrior, a path that few can walk.
She said it! She said the thing! So I was wondering where the "a path that few walk" quote comes from. This was the title of one of the songs, and I was wondering where it came from. First, this seems like younger May. She did say her dad taught her how to fight. And then an older May, probably the same age as she is on the island, because this is probably when she dies, defending her own village. This seems to match with a flashback from Extinction, and I love the scene. I think that scene is used really well in Extinction. How she thinks about it in this moment of hopelessness, and chooses to continue surviving and get Helena to safety. So I'm really excited to see how it is used here. I wonder if, since this image was the one that was paired with this soundtrack, that this flashback is shown when May tells Helena about her past. Fronto platform! And I love getting to see what I'd assume is one of the new Legion's fortresses. It's very imposing. Nerva really is just making Rome 2. This is just a random scene of someone getting attacked by piranhas in a swamp. Cool to see yet another creature. It seems like a random thing to add.
With the most humble of opponents.
At first I thought this was in the snow biome because it looked cold and blue, but also there is some fire. So maybe it connects to this scene somehow. She looks injured here, and this is probably the same scar from this image. This quote,
Even with the most humble of opponents, defiance can grow into a threat. Do you not realize what can happen when a man defies the gods?
My thoughts on this quote is that the first part seems to be Nerva explaining his motivations and describing his actions on the island. He's taking over the entire island, even fighting the smaller tribes that might not be as skilled as he is. Because while most could not defeat the new Legion, one day they could grow strong enough to fight back, and then he would be in danger. One of the examples that comes to mind is when some people attack the new Legion territory when it is left unguarded at the end. And then the second part, Nerva is the one who thinks that the gods brought him to the island. Maybe he's saying this about himself. He doesn't want to defy the gods himself. And if the obelisks are seen as the gods, or symbols of the gods, then eventually in Scorched Earth, you do find out what happens if you defy them. Maybe he's saying this about Rockwell, and thinks his interest in studying them is defying the gods. Eventually Rockwell does try to become a god, though that's later on in the notes. Once again, these are just initial thoughts. It'll be interesting to see the context of this quote in the show itself. It is very hard to see, so this might be a bit of a stretch, but it looks like 2 Rexes in the background fighting. There's at least 1 large dinosaur there. One of them may be matching the dark green one from earlier.
Grow into a threat. Do you know?
I cannot tell whose Argentavis this is. It resembles this one, so maybe it scores? It looks like he lives in a cave, so this could fit. It would be interesting to actually see this place on the island in the game, because you'd think something like this would still be there. A lot of the other buildings are probably just ruins by now, but this looks very permanent. It could also be Athena or Archimedes, Helena and Rockwell's Argentavis. I do hope we get to see them in the show, and I was really hoping to see them in the trailer.
You don't realize what can happen when a man...
Another fight in the village. I wonder if this is connected to the other scenes in the trailer where everything's on fire. Still, my first instinct is that this is the Painted Sharks battle, and Helena's just there in the series for some reason. And Daedons too, which is cool to see. I wasn't expecting them. They are fighting someone with flak armor, which seems like the armor for the New Legion, at least in the Brontosaurus part. There are some things I am curious about, such as the Howling Wolves, who appear quite frequently throughout the notes. However, I started wondering if the Daedon riders might be them. The snow area is the only place on the island where Daedons spawn, and in the end, they did begin to attack the New Legion when their territory was unprotected. If both seasons are the island, then I'd imagine that to be in Season 2, however they haven't said. I could speculate and argue for either way. If both seasons are in 2023 and most of the marketing and images and characters are from the island, then I could assume it's just the island. However, if almost every creature from the island appears in Season 1, then Season 2 could be Scorched Earth or something else. And there's really no way to know until Season 1 is over. And I'm honestly not sure which I would prefer. 2 seasons for the island is a good way to have enough time to tell the story, especially with added things. However, if that means 2 seasons per map, I'd be worried it would get cancelled before it could finish. In an ideal world, having additional time would be great, but series get cancelled all the time, and only these 2 seasons have been confirmed. However, if the show is funded by Wildcard, maybe they'd just be able to move it to a new platform if it does get cancelled. I'm not entirely sure how that works, but that seems like it could be a benefit to funding the show yourself rather than getting funding from a specific platform. Another benefit is that we don't have to worry about changes that go against the theme of the game.
And defies the gods?
And Nerva looks so cool here. Nerva does have a fancy new skull hat thing, and maybe I've mentioned this before, but one thing that I want to appreciate about Nerva's design is the symbol on his belt is very similar to the New Legion flag. Also, it's that scene from the image from a few months ago.
Beast Queen!
I love when he is silhouetted by dramatically placed lighting. Another reason why I like animation, because you can do cool things like this with it. I've been rewatching this one part over and over. That along with the Broodmother scene. That along with the Broodmother scene are probably some of my favorite parts.
Give me 1,000 lives, and I would give you 1,000 deaths.
And she's so awesome. I love everything about this scene. The first thing I thought of was
Respawned again.
as she will keep killing Nerva as many times as she has to. I'd assume that Nerva isn't actually going to respawn again, because that isn't a thing yet, but it's a metaphor, I guess. She will keep fighting the Legion as long as they keep starting wars. Maybe the 1,000 lives is a reference to all the lives the Legion has taken as well, since May seems to be interested in protecting people. Also, I like Nerva as a character. I like that he has an actual motivation, not just I'm evil and I'm going to take over the island because I can. He thinks that this is his purpose, he thinks it'll make the island a better place, and this is not trying to justify his conquering of the island, but just saying that he has a reason for what he does, which makes him compelling and interesting. And at first I was worried that they would make him a generic villain. There's nothing wrong with that, it just isn't him. But hearing his quote to Helena,
There is only one way that we all come to be in this land of the would-be dead, Helena of the Walkers.
he doesn't seem angry there. It actually seems like he's giving her advice. This quote reminds me of one of the quotes from her notes. It was from the end. Little does he know I won't give up that easily. I will find him in whatever realm he travels to. And that makes me wonder if there will be any quotes directly from the notes in the show. If we don't get Rockwell's shocked and flabbergasted quote, I will be very disappointed. One thing about the notes is that there's very little actual dialogue that books usually have because of the way these notes are written. So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to seeing in the show. It'll be something that hasn't been used much in ARC's story outside of the cutscenes.
I'm going to survive.
And also this scene of Helena, which is very cool as well. And looking at this ending scene again, I want to think that this is sometime shortly after she has arrived on the island, and this is the first sunrise that she sees. That has just been a reoccurring symbol in the arc notes, and to have Helena realize that she is determined to survive on the island after seeing the sunrise would just be a really nice touch. Or maybe the sunset, too, because it looks like she arrives sometime during the day. The show looks so beautiful, it makes me want to live on the island. I never thought I'd say that, because angry dinosaurs? But I would deal with the angry dinosaurs if it looked like this every day. And the leaves in the end reminds me a lot of the Extinction end cutscene. I think that's just my overall thoughts about the trailer summarized. Wow, this is cool. It's still hard for my brain to associate this with the characters that I know and love, just simply because I've been imagining it in my head for so long that it's really hard to believe that this is real and not just another one of my attempts at picturing what it will be like. I've been imagining an ARC show for so long, since even before it was announced, that I am still in a state of disbelief about all this. I just don't know how to put it into words. I have to just watch it occasionally to remind myself that it is real. This is happening eventually. I think I always felt that way about things that I'm excited for. I think it would be easier to accept that this is actually happening if there was a release date. What do I think could be happening in the plot of the show? Well, there's the fact that it is going to be following the lore of the game and the Explorer notes, at least to an extent. All the same characters are there, and that it is accurate to the notes for the most part, along with filling in gaps and backstories the notes don't cover, and changes to be more appropriate to a different medium and pacing. Which does make sense. I do like the pacing of the notes, but maybe that wouldn't work as well for a show. It does seem to take a while for all of the characters to finally meet and be involved in the same events, I guess. In the beginning, they're all doing separate things and occasionally meeting each other, like Helena and Rockwell, or Rockwell and Nerva, or Helena and May. And then near the end, there's this big battle at one of the obelisks, and that, I think, is the first point where they're all in the same place at the same time, even though some of them might not know it. The characters might interact more in the show, because a lot of the notes are the characters' thoughts. That's more difficult to portray in a show than something that's written. So maybe instead of showing one character's thoughts about another character, they will just be interacting with each other more. And this is just speculation from what the trailer shows, but I would assume the beginning would be Helena arriving on the island, meeting Bob. He shows her how to survive on the island. She becomes determined to survive on the island. She tames her parasaur. They encounter a few dinosaurs. Helena probably starts writing her book and becoming interested in the paleontology and biology aspect of it all. The dodo stops appearing at some point in the trailer. I'm very worried for it, knowing ARC, but maybe she just gave the dodo to someone else. We get to see her backstory, along with the backstories of other characters. I'm really interested to see how the show begins, what the first scene is, if it's Helena's backstory, or if it's a scene on the island. At some point, Helena must find this cave where the saber-tooth is, and I'd assume that's where she meets May. These two could happen at around the same time. They both seem to be very dramatic battle scenes with dark lighting, taking place at night perhaps. And a lot of this looks like one big dramatic battle scene. Maybe this is a final climatic battle at the end of the season between May and Nerva. It would be funny if these two scenes happened together. This heartfelt conversation in a field, and then two angry stegosaurs chasing them. The broodmother scene. I still want to talk about that. While she never said that she fought it in the notes, she was hired to defend many different tribes, and she probably did not mention all of them. Maybe she fought it with the Iron Brotherhood. That still wouldn't explain why Helena is there, if this scene does take place in the broodmother's arena. You would think a giant spider is something that she would mention in her notes, but maybe not. Or this is just one of the changes they made to make the plot flow better, and so that they did not have to add more new characters than they already had. And to me, that is what seems the most likely, that they changed the broodmother story, and maybe that's better for the series. Of course, I'm always going to be apprehensive of a change, but I won't have a complete opinion until I see the show, which is hopefully soon. This trailer is very cool, but it ended up giving me more questions than I already had about the show, which is what trailers are supposed to do. I would have liked to see Isabel, if only to have confirmation that she is in the series. It does seem strange that one of the only other named characters is not in the cast list. But no Rockwell, and therefore no Isabel, and no Gerald as well, the compy guy. And even though they weren't in the trailer, that doesn't mean they won't appear. Most of the new characters weren't in it, but I'm just really excited to see what they look like. A large portion of the trailer was dedicated to Helena's past, which I think is important. Also, I want to see the architect who advised against the ceiling for the New Legion's base. Also, creature taming. I'm very curious to see how that works in the show, because so far the closest thing we've seen is Helena and the dodo, that she just pets a few times, and it is suddenly her friend, which is not how it works in the game. So does that mean that the method of taming some of the creatures might be more similar to passive taming in-game? I know that a lot of stories have a plot where the bad guys are the ones hurting the animals, and the good guys are the ones trying to befriend the animals. I'm wondering if that is how they will change creature taming in this story, but I also don't think that's necessary, especially because the animals are genetically engineered to be tameable by humans and act like a domesticated animal, and that is a important plot point in the story. And also, we will lose the scenes where May cheats and uses a bow and arrow to tame even the most dangerous of dinosaurs. I am curious to see how the show is going to explain Ark's taming method to an audience that might be unfamiliar with the game, especially before the characters find out or speculate that the animals are genetically engineered. Because while it might be something that works as a video game mechanic, it is something that I would have questioned had I been watching the show without any prior knowledge of Ark.